Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and the other host is Chris. What's up, buddy?
Hello, my dear friend Zach. I hope you are great. Awesome to see you, my dear friend. It is the Thanksgiving weekend, right? It is for us, it is Sunday after Thanksgiving, and welcome everyone. At least Thanksgiving in the United States. Welcome everyone around the
Yeah.
world. Um, yeah, thank you so much for being here. Zach, did you have any? I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Did you have any Thanksgiving fails?
Uh, are you asking me because you had a Thanksgiving fail that you want to talk about?
I had multiple,
Oh, you had
multiple things.
multiple?
Yeah, multiple Thanksgiving
Oh my
fails.
gosh.
Yeah.
So I didn't cook any of the Thanksgiving meal.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I did, was it last year or a couple years ago I did where we smoked the turkey. We
Mm.
spatchcocked it where you cut out the backbone, you lay it flat, and then you smoke it. Um, it was either last year or a couple years ago where I smoked the turkey. And so I have done some Thanksgiving cooking, but this year I did not. We did traditional, so my wife handled all of the fixings. I did make leftover. So I found a
There you
recipe
go.
online, Chris, with for
Yeah.
leftovers. I made Thanksgiving leftover egg rolls.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
So you take the egg roll wrapper, right?
Yeah.
And I put in sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, homemade cranberry sauce my wife makes, which is amazing, like fresh cranberries and all this good stuff. Um, Stuffing, turkey, and then roll it in the egg roll, and then deep fry it. Comes out nice
Hmm.
and crispy, and then you dip it in gravy instead of like soy sauce.
Yeah.
Dude, it was really good. It's like every time I took a bite and dipped it in the gravy and took a bite, it was like getting like a whole bite of a Thanksgiving meal in one
Yeah.
bite. And then you get the crunch from the egg roll. It was amazing. I found the recipe online on YouTube from this guy named Chud's Barbecue.
Yeah.
It was so good. And the Thanksgiving meal was really good. But I got to hear about these failures that you said you had
Yeah.
because you brought it up. I got to hear about it
Multiple.
now.
Yeah. Multiple, man.
What
So,
happened?
yeah. I make really good pies. And so, yeah. So I made like this appleberry pie, which is fantastic. And then my daughter and I made three sweet potato pies, which was great. And another berry pie. So it's great. And so the sweet potato pies, we did a great job preparing them and cooking them, um, and then eating them not so much because we completely forgot about the pies. And then we were like, where are the pies? And so
Oh no.
the next day we were like going, yeah, what happened to those pies? Where did they go? And the pies are still in the oven. They're still in the oven right now. Sunday after Thanksgiving. So,
What?
so that was one fail with the
Wait. They,
pies.
they
Yeah.
weren't still in the oven, like with the oven cooking them, were they?
No, not with
Okay.
them cooked. Yeah, or not with the oven still on. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Well, that's good. But
yeah,
they stayed warm and they never cool like,
yeah.
oh man.
Well, they're
Okay.
cool now. They
They're,
stayed
yeah,
warm.
well, yeah, they're cool now, but
So that was the case of the forgotten pies because we were wondering what happened to
okay.
those
This
sweet potato pies, and we were yeah,
this sounds like it's gonna be a book one day.
it might
The
be.
Case of the Forgotten Pies sounds like
Yeah,
a mystery novel.
yeah. And we were hosting, so there was like a lot going on like at the same time
Oh yeah.
with all of the people over. So the
Yeah.
pie was like strike number one. And then
Mm.
and so the dinner rolls we had um I realized didn't realize that I needed to set out the dinner rolls to rise for a good 5 to 6
Oh,
hours, my
because you were
friend.
making it from scratch.
Mm,
You made it from scratch then,
yeah.
huh? Oh.
Strike number two on the dinner rolls
Oh.
for me. My wife made the turkey, which she did a wonderful job making the turkey, so
Yeah,
that
I
was
bet it
good.
was good.
Yeah, yeah. Uh at during dinner, someone made the comment of asking where the stuffing was. Strike number three, and that I had the stuffing out and was ready to make it, but somehow didn't get around to making the actual stuffing. So strike number three, like on the stuffing, that I didn't actually have the stuffing. Yeah.
Oh wow. Wow. Well, that makes for an interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I should say this. Okay, I'll say it anyways because that my wife doesn't watch this podcast, so it doesn't matter. But so she had a little bit of a fail, but it's not like a big fail. So we had some guests over, but not many, just a couple.
Mhm.
And she was going to start the turkey at this specific time so that she'd cook it, it would rest, and then we would eat at like 3 or 3:30, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't like to eat like 1 noon or 1 o'clock. It's too early. Like we have kids, right? We want to eat like kind of closer to dinner time.
Yeah.
So she put it in the oven, and it was in the oven, but the oven was not on.
Oh, yeah.
She forgot to turn it
You
on. So,
go.
but that was only like a 30-minute delay. Like she realized 30 minutes later that,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't even turn the oven on. So we just ate like 30 minutes later. It wasn't that big a deal. But
There you go.
she
Yeah.
was like, I feel so scatterbrained. I can't believe I did that. And I'm like, it happens. I mean, you've been up since 8:30. You're making all this food. Um, my wife's the kind of person where when she's in the kitchen cooking, she doesn't want anybody else in there. Like, stay out, get out of her way. So I oblige gladly and go sit on the couch and watch football.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Even if I
Yeah.
ask for help, she's like, "Nope, I'm good. Stay out of the kitchen." I'm like, "All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
I will park myself on the couch and do my due diligence to stay out of your way."
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that all this happened because I had planned, you know, I had written all this stuff down. I'm gonna prepare like this, prepare that. I wrote it down. I check mark everything after I prepare it. Alas, I still was not
Yeah.
able.
Well, you had an excuse though, Chris, because you have all this food going on, right? All these things
Yeah,
you're trying to remember and
yeah,
do, and you're going here and you're going there, and it happens, man. I mean,
yeah.
you keep telling me we're getting younger, but the evidence suggests otherwise.
No, we're getting younger. It's just the world puts more and more like responsibility on us all the time.
Oh, okay. Is that what that is? All right.
That is what it
Okay.
is.
Well, but
Indeed.
but but you were with family and friends, so at the end of the day, I'm sure Thanksgiving still went pretty well, and you guys had a good time and enjoy each other's company, so that's good.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, everybody, thank you so much as always for watching and listening all over the globe in the interwebs. We very much appreciate that. If it's your first time, welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. We're a couple of nerdy guys who like to talk about all things nerdy and geeky. And be sure to go on to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, YouTube if you're on the podcast platforms to find the video version of this episode and many others. And we also have an audio side if you're on YouTube where you can find every single one of our episodes, including ones we did before we did video, on your favorite podcast platform. Uh, I know I'm excited, Chris. I know you're excited. We're both excited to start a brand new Spotlight series here on the podcast. We have done a Spotlight series on the Mirror Universe. We've done a Spotlight series on Section 31. We're starting a brand new Spotlight series today here in the early goings of Season 8 of the podcast. And this Spotlight series is entitled Starfleet's Finest, question mark. It's a little bit of a play, or a little bit of a ploy too, I would say, because some of the people we're going to talk about over the Spotlight series might not be Starfleet's finest, regardless of how high up in rank they are. And this Spotlight series is going to focus on leadership and memorable admirals and captains that we have seen throughout Star Trek, and we're going to focus mostly on the legacy Star Trek because there's so many. We could do the Spotlight series for years. There's so many of them. And so what we did is we went through and picked out what we thought were some memorable admirals and captains from episodes across the legacy Star Trek shows that were either good or bad or both, and talk about that and discuss that and debate that. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to this, Chris.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic. As you bring in like typically in Star Trek, as you bring in those higher ranked individuals, whether it is an admiral, or a senior captain or a commodore, it's interesting because they usually have a very, very certain perspective and certain point of view that they are completely, totally like behind, right? And that's usually in conflict. It's usually in conflict with with the captain, or other members of the episode. And so
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to kind of see like, how all of that like plays out because sometimes they may not necessarily be wrong. They just have a very, very different perspective. And sometimes they may be very, very in the wrong too. Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And there's a ton of them. We have a number of episodes lined up that we're going to be doing as part of the Spotlight series, discussing these characters. A lot of these characters that, if you're watching or listening, you probably will remember and know because they're very memorable, many of them. There's a few that even I had forgotten in some particular episodes, but certainly memorable moments, both good and bad, and why I think it's a fun part of this series to discuss from a morality perspective, from the character of the character, from their leadership style, from their impact on the crew, that kind of stuff. Really important. So, another I guess not caution, but just kind of upfront warning. We are not going to be going in chronological order as far as when the episodes premiered. All right, we're going to tackle specific episodes in each of the series, but in within those series, they're not going to be in order. We'll go in chronological order with the series, but the individual episodes within that series, like for example, TNG has a number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 7 of them.
Hmm.
They may not be in the same order at which they premiere in the same season or whatever. I just kind of wrote them down. So, well, we're going to start with the original series, Chris. We've got a couple episodes in the original series. Starting in this episode, we're going to discuss, and you all probably know by the title of it, is the TOS episode, The Doomsday Machine. And our focus character for this episode is none other than Commodore Matthew Decker.
Commodore Matthew Decker. This is a wonderful episode, The Doomsday Machine. And then Commodore Decker, like throughout this episode, uh, I mean, you don't see it in this episode, but you kind of get the sense that he has some history of being a very accomplished Commodore. And, he's got a great kind of like Starfleet history. But he is a very, very like broken man in this one and a man in shock.
Yeah.
And it's kind of he it's excellently played by the actor, I think, in this one.
You're absolutely right on that. Commodore Decker is certainly an interesting character to begin our Spotlight series looking at, and in particular, as part of the discussion of the Doomsday Machine. Um, I do remember on several occasions in the past, Chris, maybe over the last year and a half, where you have mentioned the Doomsday Machine on a number of occasions, and that told me, hey, we definitely have to talk about the Doomsday Machine because that certainly seems to be an episode that really stood out to you and had some level of impact on you.
Yeah, it did. Some of the things where they talk about conceptually on the Doomsday Machine. So this is in the 60s. Uh, is very timely and relevant even until now, right? Because they're talking about this device, this Doomsday Machine. They don't really know the origin. They're just speculating that this was a device possibly created by a civilization that was not really intended to be used, but it was just supposed to totally scare different civilizations away from kind of putting this weapon into play because this weapon is like so horrific and this is in the time where you've got the nuclear arms race between Russia and United States and the kind of deterrent of like each different country building up their own like nuclear arms and own kind of nuclear arsenal of doomsday devices itself between the United States and Russia. Um, and so I think it's a great metaphor that, hey, this is what it is. And at the end of this episode, right, they destroy this doomsday device by um, exploding the constellation, the Starship constellation, I think in a
Yeah.
nuclear fashion, right? So
Yeah, they
yeah,
overload the impulse engines,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. This episode is certainly, like many episodes of TOS and Star Trek in general, it is a commentary on what's going on in society, right? It is
yeah.
taking something that's a part of society, a storyline, societal development, whatever, and it's doing what it Star Trek does best, which is social commentary. And so I'm glad you mentioned that idea. Um, not idea. I'm glad you mentioned the historical moments of what was going on in the 60s with the arms race, and you had, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you had the beginning of the Cold War between the United States and Russia, or the Soviet Union, actually, I guess it would be back then. So certainly important to talk about. This episode was written by Norman Spinrad and directed by Mark Daniels. I think it's a fantastic episode, really, really great episode. And there's a lot of really great stuff to break down here. So let's go ahead and jump into this. This episode starts out with the on the USS Enterprise. And by the way, we don't have Uhura as the comm officer. We have a Lieutenant Palmer, who is actually the one receiving a faint and garbled distress signal.
Indeed, that's right. Lieutenant Palmer is the communications officer on this one. So, yeah, we have to wonder, like, where is Lieutenant Uhura
Maybe
during
she's
all
on
this?
shore leave. I don't know.
Indeed.
I mean, this is season two, right? And there's a story that Nichelle Nichols told many times when she was alive about how she was thinking about after the first season of Star
Mm.
Trek quitting and going and doing something different. And she met with Martin Luther King Jr. And him and his family used to watch Star Trek as a family. It was one of the few shows they watched together all together as a family. And he said, "You can't. You're too important. It's important that we have an African American right there on the bridge and this main character with everything going on in the world and in the United States at the time." So I'm not sure exactly why she was not in this season two episode. I don't know the backstory about that, but indeed, we do not have Uhura as our comm officer for this episode in particular.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we open up with Lieutenant Palmer explaining to the captain, Captain Kirk, that she's receiving a faint signal. She's only able to really make out the word Constellation. But when she says Constellation, you kind of get that look on Captain Kirk's face where he totally recognizes what that is. Obviously, that's the Starship Constellation, and so he's got some history, like, of knowledge right there on where it is. And so
Yeah.
the Enterprise enters like system L370, and they kind of discover that most of the planets in the system, the planets have been destroyed. The star is still there, but the planets have been destroyed. So it sets it up for this mystery.
Isn't
And
that crazy?
yeah,
So I believe L370, as you mentioned, was the first um system that they enter,
mm,
right? Looking for trying to find the distress signal. And there's I believe they say there's like seven planets in the system and they're all
yeah,
gone. All of them, seven planets. This episode, Chris, is the original Death Star, right? This is pre Star
yeah,
Wars.
yeah.
So the Death Star and the planet killer thing, that wasn't a thing yet. Um, Star Trek brings on this idea of a planet killer in the Doomsday Machine. And we see the same thing that it's doing now is what the Death Star is going to do, a little over a decade later in Star Wars. So I find that also very fascinating that we're kind of getting a foreshadowing of things to come in the world of sci-fi.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. I also thought of Transformers, because in the Transformers universe they have what's called Unicron, and Unicron like devours planets.
Oh,
I
okay.
always I always thought of that too. So,
Yeah. Now,
oh yeah.
if we were going in chronological order on the Star Trek timeline,
Hmm.
we know that in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they have that machine that we meet in season three,
Oh yeah.
right? That was created by the humans, that season three episode that neither one of us were
Hmm.
super huge fans of. Um, where that they have that machine that can actually destroy, I think it destroys planets, right?
Yeah, I think
In that
so.
too. So we meet something similar to this earlier, but it's not with Kirk, obviously it's with Pike's Enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So our Enterprise just continues on, and they go to another system, L374, where they find the constellation, and they find more planet rubble, and
Yeah.
they find the constellation kind of not responding, and it is just adrift in space, and you can tell it has been really, really battle damaged, and so that's what they find.
Okay, I want to ask you this question because I was thinking about this the entire time I was watching this episode. The whole
Yeah,
the whole episode I thought about this,
yeah.
and I want to get your thoughts on this because the all the images we see of the Constellation in this episode, from the very first snapshot all the way through before it goes into the Doomsday Machine and they overload the impulse engines and blow it up. The hull was so jacked up. There were huge pieces of the saucer section missing and everything. And you're telling me that life support was still working?
Yeah, I thought about the same thing. Yeah,
I
yeah,
was thinking about it through the whole episode, Chris, and I was like, I cannot wait to talk to Chris about this is well one of many things, but
yeah,
that particular thing. Because I'm like, I'm having a hard time pushing the I believe button on this, where you're telling me that even Kirk mentions that, well, yeah, Commodore Decker's, lucky or something about, the ship still having its environmental systems working. It's like, how did it have those systems working when huge mass amounts of the hull are just completely gone and you see the framing of the ship?
yeah, yeah. I totally thought the same thing. I think it was Spock said, yeah, the bridge is the only place where there was not really any life support, right? And but he said the other places there's still like minimal life support throughout the rest of the ship, and then you've got you've got all of these like pieces missing from the ship. Just,
But if you look in the images that they show outside, where the bridge is, doesn't it looks completely fine.
mm.
So how is it that that has no life support, but huge other chunks of the hull has life support? It was just a little nuance thing that just kind of bugged me a little bit. I'm like this. I'm not believing that the life support on a ship this badly jacked up is working.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, that's funny. And well, you see this messed up ship, right? And
Yeah.
I always find this comical too. And the captain wants to go aboard, so I think he's like, okay, I'm gonna go aboard, and Scotty's gonna go aboard, and then have a damage team like with me, and I'm gonna go on. Does he bring Bones? I think he brings Bones
Yeah.
too as well.
Yes, he brings
Yeah,
Dr. McCoy with him too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Okay, Mr. Spock, like you're in charge of the Enterprise," and Spock's like, "Acknowledge this, sir." And so I always think it's funny you contrast TOS with the Next Generation because it's this ship is like so battered, and the
Yeah.
cat and the captain goes, I'm gonna go on, I'm gonna go on
Yeah.
and check it out, you know?
If it were Picard, Chris, he'd be like, number one, lead an away team.
Yeah,
I'll put number one in danger. I'm not going.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But this goes back to what you talked about, and you've mentioned this several times about Kirk before, and this is another example being spot on. And you've mentioned that Kirk wants to do things himself. He wants to always be in the action. He wants to be right in the forefront. And this is another perfect example of him doing that.
yeah. He has to be in the action. And so, and a little bit later, I'm going to talk about Kirk and his relationship with the Decker family. And so,
Oh yes, please do.
yeah,
Please do.
yeah. So yeah, they beam aboard to the ship, and there no one's on the ship. There's plenty of damage systems around the ship, and Kirk is wondering, okay, where did they all go? They just left. What's going on? And then Kirk makes a comment that I found was a good comment. Kirk goes, "A man like Decker, like with the environmental system still on, he would not leave his ship." Right?
Yeah.
He says that, right? And so
Yeah.
when Decker didn't leave his ship, they end up
Right.
finding him like a moment later in one of the rooms.
Yeah, it's interesting because Commodore Decker, I do not believe is in any other episodes of Star Trek: The Original Series. I think he
Mm.
appears in the animated series, but as far as TOS goes, he's not. I don't think in any other episodes. So we don't meet him before this, but it's clear from the time they find Commodore Decker in that little room that he's in. Right, he's like passed out, and he's got the record tapes with him and everything, and he's not passed out, but he's just in extreme shock. Right, and they find him. Kirk calls him by his first name, even though he outranks him.
Yeah.
There's clearly some type of friendship or past relationship that's strong enough where he feels comfortable doing that, right? Because
Yeah.
again, Commodore Decker is his superior officer. He's gonna remind Kirk of that later in the episode. But there is that some level of friendship or relationship where he feels comfortable calling him Matt or Matt Decker rather than Commodore.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And when we see Matt Decker, Commodore Decker, kind of, he is so in shock and he kind of comes to. and he's horrified. So he's
Yeah.
kind of he's looking around when McCoy gives him a hyperspray to kind of bring him back to reality, and then he recognizes Jim, calls him Jim. I think he calls him Jim, right? Or maybe he calls him Kirk. One of
It's
those.
yeah, it's one
Yeah,
of the two, but he doesn't say captain. He says one
yeah,
of his yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And uh, you know he can't even verbalize like what's happened. He just says this thing has come and it's attacked us, and then he can't even continue. He can't even verbalize because he's so horrified about what happened. And we
Right.
learned later in the episode, right, that the entire crew had perished. Um, and I I don't think I, I yeah, throughout this episode, I think there's some it's implied that Commodore Decker made a poor judgment, but I'm not really sure that he did. I think you know, he they were in a battle. He tried to protect his crew by beaming his crew to the planet. Um, obviously that didn't turn out well because the Doomsday Machine destroyed that planet. But I think his intent was he was beaming him the planet so that the crew would be saved, and he would take the Constellation and take that ship and do something with the Constellation to try and destroy this Doomsday device.
Yeah, or at the very minimum, sacrifice himself in order to save his crew, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah. And I think it was either Kirk or someone that had just made it. It was this small statement throughout the episode, but someone that says, "No, you can't. No one's going to blame you, or you can't always blame yourself for a poor judgment." It was some sort of phrase like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think you're right, Chris. And we can discuss this point more as we go through the episode because I think this is a very meaningful and important point that you just made, and that is that uh, at least for Commodore Decker, and we're probably going to have a couple of moments or questions that we dive into like this one for a lot of these characters, which is what's going to make this Spotlight series so much fun to discuss these individuals on a deeper level, even though they're just a cameo character for one episode or only a couple episodes, right? But they're senior leadership within Starfleet, right? And in particular with Commodore Decker, the question for with this is did he make a bad judgment? Did he make the wrong choice by beaming down his crew? I agree with you, Chris, wholeheartedly. I don't think that he did. I think based on everything we know, initially when this happened, when he beamed his crew down, he was in his right frame of mind,
yeah,
right? He was doing what
yeah,
he thought as because even though he's a Commodore, he was the commanding officer on board the Constellation. He was, for all intents and purposes, like what they would do in the Navy, he's the captain of the ship, even though he's a Commodore, right?
yeah,
So, and they would call him captain because he's the captain of the ship. Um, the captain of the ship is a position, not a rank, right? And so, although I mean, with Kirk, it's both, but in the case of the Commodore, it's his position, not a rank.
yeah,
But I think that's an important thing to note and something we definitely want to discuss as we go through the episode and come back to because that ultimately I think is what drives the Commodore to do what he does the rest of the episode.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to put a little more context on the circumstance that the Commodore had, like definitely make it a point where they cannot communicate with Starfleet. There's
Yep.
heavy subspace interference. Their communications are like they're are blind essentially. They can't communicate out. They've got just they just have this thing, this world destroying thing that's either uh that's going from system to system destroying everything in its path.
Yeah.
So then like what do you do from there, right? You can't communicate out. You've got this thing destroying worlds. What do you take on as like your mission?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the decisions that the Commodore makes later in the episode that we'll discuss, where it's controversial and there's a lot of tension on the bridge between him and Spock and Kirk on the communicator, uh, I think is driven by the sheer level of guilt, the significant
Yeah.
level of guilt he has because his entire crew was wiped out by this doomsday machine on the planet. And he obviously takes full responsibility for that. He obviously feels guilty because it was his decision to beam them down there. But I think the reference point at which he's coming from in making that decision is is the right one, is a good one,
Yeah.
right? It's the idea of saving his crew's life. He feels that's, and he even says that, right? Like, it's my job as the captain of the ship, the commanding officer, to protect my crew and
Yeah.
save their lives. And so he was coming from the right place by doing that. But that doesn't take away from the fact of what actually happened, and therefore that guilt is just overpowering on him and weighs him down massively.
Yeah. That seems to be like that's what broke him in this episode,
Yes.
right?
Good point. Yep.
Where his crew perished. And then he couldn't separate himself. So there was a lot of this of like um his guilt, right? So he couldn't become objective after that. So he couldn't separate himself from that decision, right? So like he made the decision was made on good intentions that, hey, I want to save the crew. I'm going to sacrifice myself to destroy this thing. Unfortunately, like that didn't happen. Then it got broke. Then he got broken. He couldn't objectively separate himself and go, okay, what do we need to do now? He just became bent on uh I don't know if revenge is the right word or vengeance or to avenge his crew or something. He just got so focused on um that Doomsday Machine being, if you were gonna say he's Captain Ahab, then the Doomsday Machine became the whale, right?
I
So
was just
yeah,
gonna say there's a little bit
yeah,
of Moby Dick here, right?
yeah,
There really is, and I think no, I think you're 100% right. I think that he is hell bent on revenge.
yeah,
Getting well, mostly. I think the element of revenge of getting back for the Doomsday Machine just killing his crew, but then also the protection of the rest of the solar system, which or the rest of the galaxy, which he mentions um, later on, right? So I do think that's important.
yeah,
So they come across the constellation. It's adrift. It looks pretty dang beat up to me. I don't know how the environmental controls and life support would be functioning, but somehow they are. So I guess do have to push the I win but I believe button. Um, they do beam over with the landing party, and they do find him in that particular. I don't know exactly what that particular room he was in was. I guess it's like a
uh,
place where they can play back record tapes or something. I'm not exactly sure, but they definitely find him in there. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, Chris, but this stood out to me. When the landing party beams onto the Constellation, you have Scotty, you have McCoy, you have Kirk, and you have the damage control team. The damage control team was wearing yellow uniforms, not red. I would think damage control would be things like engineering and operations,
yeah,
which to me would fall under red.
yeah,
Why were they wearing command yellow? I don't know.
yeah. That's
That
a
was a
great
little
point.
weird to me. I'm
That's a
like,
great point. Yeah,
I mean, they did survive, so I guess if they had worn red, maybe they would have died in like an accident, like a fire or something on the ship, and they would have perished or something. But yeah, they were wearing yellow shirts, not red ones.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I know it's really bizarre and it's weird, but we are the random red shirts, and we do tend to notice these things, folks. So
We
it
do.
does kind of make sense.
You know, I noticed this was subtle, but I'm jumping around a little bit. At the beginning of this episode, like on the bridge of the Enterprise,
Hmm.
um, it had two red shirt security guards armed with phasers at the turbo lift door.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Why?
Yeah, it was very like why? Yeah, like high security like there. Like, huh, okay.
Yeah, and it was never explained either, because
Yeah,
that's not common. I mean, you don't. I mean, it happens, but you don't see that in every episode. So had they just come out of a battle? Were they in a dangerous sector of space? Like, I mean, they do mention that later on in the episode they mentioned that the Doomsday Machine was turning and heading on a new course, like heading away. Right? It was decided to kind of ignore the ships, and that its course was going to take them to none other than the Rigel system,
yeah,
which is of course a huge reference because Rigel has been a huge part of Star Trek over
Yeah.
the years and the shows and so forth, and in Strange New Worlds and TOS and I think even the TOS movies. But yeah, that was strange as well. I
Yeah.
didn't understand the security guards. Like, what was the purpose of them unless there was some danger to the ship at that moment, which there wasn't in the beginning.
Yeah. I thought it was very interesting. It gave it a, you know, very militaristic feel.
Yeah.
Um, and then like, yeah, everyone on the ship at that point at the beginning of the episode, everyone belonged on the ship. So what was the reason for all of that security? Hmm.
Maybe those two redshirt ensigns were getting bridge time in order to accrue credits towards promotion.
Ah,
Maybe, I
true,
don't know. I'm just,
true, very true.
got to make something up, right? But
Yeah, and then
uh
later on in the episode, when one of those red shirts security guards was ordered to like escort the Commodore down for his medical examination, guy didn't do a very good job fighting, man.
no, I'm trying to understand why he was a security officer if he couldn't take down an old Commodore. I mean, come on, man. Come on. But you did notice so like so when the red shirt had Commodore Decker in like this like kind of not quite a
Yeah,
chokehold, but like he had
full
his arms
Nelson.
up like
Yeah,
this. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah, like that, right? And like like the way he kind of got out of the full Nelson reminded me of something Kirk would have done in that
yeah,
situation. Like
yeah.
that's like a Kirk move, you
It
know?
was like he did this
Yeah.
he boxed the ears. Yeah, he hit that guy's ears.
Yeah, exactly. So when Scotty plays back Decker's log, his captain's log is very interesting because and what I find interesting in this is that in the log he says we're now entering system L374. Officer Masada reports the fourth planet seems to be breaking up. We are going to investigate. So that tells you a couple of things, right? The third planet hadn't been broken up yet, which is why the crew is beamed down. But on top of that, the Constellation had no clue that this Doomsday Machine was doing this, and there was some planet destroyer. It was simply investigating some type of strange phenomenon. In this case, the fact that a planet, one of the planets in the solar system, was breaking up without the star in that solar system going supernova or causing some type of mass explosion that would have potentially led to the breakup of one of the planets.
Yeah, yeah. So that I think Kirk says, well, that's incredible. Like, how could that have even happened? Um,
Right. But it explains this idea, right? Because that to me is the backstory and explains the extreme shock that Decker had because they were not expecting, obviously, to encounter something like this, let alone something so incredibly powerful.
yeah, they're investigating some sort of phenomenon that they don't understand, and then all of a sudden, uh, they're under attack by this o overwhelming like
Yeah.
force, right?
Yeah,
So,
which Decker describes as it to Kirk as it's miles and miles long. So this is
mhm.
a massive, massive piece of machinery.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, it is. Hmm. Yeah, and the
Another important part of this that we note too is that the subspace interference is also an important aspect, right? Because the subspace interference keeps them from being able to contact Starfleet and therefore get backup.
mhm. Yeah,
It's just, I mean, Decker is lucky that the Enterprise happened to be in earshot range of the distress call that was put out.
yeah.
Because if not, then he would have died on that ship the way it was, and the Doomsday Machine might have kept right on going. In fact, Spock even references at one point that its path was eventually going to take them through the middle of the galaxy, which would put all these lives and worlds and everything at risk.
And with the subspace interference, like when Decker kind of comes to more of his senses, um, and Kirk and Spock and Scotty and McCoy, they're kind of talking about like, hey, what's our next play? What are we gonna do? We should just kind of get out of here and leave, like essentially, right? Decker's reaction, it is emotional, but his reaction is also he has a point.
Yeah.
He's going, what are you gonna do? This thing is coming to go to the center of the galaxy and destroy all of these civilizations throughout the center of the galaxy. Like, you gonna let that happen? What are you gonna do? Because Decker's advocating like, hey, let's go like destroy this thing no matter what the cost, right?
Yeah,
And he's not objective enough uh to do it wisely, but he does have a point. Like, he, this thing's got to be stopped.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's two sides to it. You can see in on one hand that Decker's not fully in his right frame of mind because of what's happened and the shock and everything else that's happened to him. But then on the other hand, he does have a very a great point. I don't know if this Doomsday Machine reminded you of this, but it reminded me a little bit of the alien probe from Star Trek 4. And I say that because of the interference, right? When the alien probe approaches Earth, there's a lot of communication interference, and they're not able to, like at Starfleet headquarters, right? They're not able to get the communication out,
Hmm.
right? And they're not able to communicate with the Enterprise, who is on its way to Earth to try to help
Yeah.
and so forth. So that subspace interference piece and this big machine thing kind of reminded me of that Star Trek 4 alien probe.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. They kind of have a similar aesthetic look too, right?
Yeah.
With this big long tube.
Hmm.
Um, I was reminded a lot and this has to do with the Decker family and Kirk's relationship with the Decker family, of in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where it is like at that point it was V'ger, but V'ger's coming in and kind of, as V'ger comes in, it kind of devours everything that it comes in contact with, being V'ger.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got Will Decker at the time. Will Decker is going to become captain of the Enterprise, and our Captain Kirk or Admiral Kirk. Was he Admiral at
Admiral
the
Kirk.
time?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was Admiral at the
Yeah.
time.
Admiral. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, he wasn't going to let that happen.
No.
No.
No, he had to take over. Like, but it's a great point you have made, and I think it's an important thing that we continue to note that once again, Kirk has to be in the center of it all, in the center of the action,
Yeah, he's got
right?
to be in the action. Yeah.
It's not that. So I look at it, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chris. I look at it as it's not that Kirk, um, it's not that he wants like all the glory and the attention. He wants to be there to help. He wants to be there in the action to ensure that something is done or a bad thing is stopped, because he thinks he can make it work and make it happen. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think it's a perspective. I don't think it's an ego thing. Like he has to get all the attention and the spotlight.
no, you are absolutely right. You're spot on, because in one of the movies, um, I don't remember which. Yeah, oh, it was in Star Trek Generations. I think it was Kirk imparting his life advice to Picard, where he says, "Don't ever let anyone take you from the captain's chair, because that's where you're able to make a difference." Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just part of his. That's where he feels like, and he's correct. That's where he feels like he can make a difference. So,
And I think that's where he feels most comfortable, right?
hmm.
Because
Yeah,
you can tell in the movies when he's an admiral, he can't help himself, right? He can't help himself. Even in Star Trek Generations, he can't sit back on the Enterprise B bridge and not pipe up because he just feels like that's where he can make the most impact, right? The biggest difference. So,
yeah. Or his reaction in Star Trek 2 when he's admiral at the time, and he's watching the Kobayashi Maru test kind of play out, and he just kind of, I think he's kind of unimpressed.
yeah.
Like,
Well, he's the only one to beat the Kobayashi
yeah,
Maru,
that's
albeit he
right.
does kind of cheat, but
Yeah.
we won't get into that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So, Washburn, who I believe was one of the individuals who beams over as part of the landing party on the
Mm.
Constellation, does report that the ship's antimatter stores have somehow been deactivated. And Kirk does ask Scotty if it's some type of general dampening field that could be responsible for that and the subspace interference. Scotty does agree, but they don't know what could produce something like this. So that's
Yeah.
also an important thing to note because if you have some type of field being generated by this alien vessel or this thing that is literally making your antimatter not work, then you can't get away, right? it's literally coming in. Not only is it destroying planets, but it's able to pretty much wipe out any technological pieces that may stand in its way from accomplishing whatever it is it's trying to accomplish. And I know they
Yeah.
briefly talk about how I think Kirk mentions, well, what if it was part of an alien species that warred and it was one of their weapons, and the alien species has all died out, but this weapon still goes on and continues its mission,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I thought was actually a really fascinating idea.
Good. Because then what are you going to do? Right. So, yeah. Totally. But they're able to get so eventually Decker, they're able to bring him back to the Enterprise. Uh, and both Decker and McCoy go back to the Enterprise. Scotty and Kirk stay on the Constellation, try to fix things up a little bit more there, try to get the Constellation in better shape. Um, but it, while Decker is on the Enterprise, we get to see these really like fascinating um, interfaces and dialogues between him and well the bridge crew and him and Spock and
Yeah.
McCoy, right? So Spock is very logical throughout this. I mean, Spock is saying,
To a
"Hey,
fault.
yeah, 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 you're right to a fault." But Spock's like, "Hey, we essentially the play Spock's play is we need to be able to warn Starfleet Command. You know, we need to get out of proximity of this if of this device, get out of danger, so we can go to Starfleet Command and warn them." And Decker doesn't like that at all. Decker completely like disagrees and he's like, I'm relieving you of command. Essentially, that's where he goes. Hey,
Yeah.
um, or not relieving him of command, or he's taking command of the
Yeah.
Enterprise, right? He's
And,
asserting
and he
his,
and he has
yeah,
every authority to do so under
yeah,
Starfleet regulations.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's not like he's violating them. He's actually following regulations.
yeah, yeah. And he does that because he wants to go and attack it. Um, because he part of what Decker's saying is like, hey, our primary duty is to protect the Federation and protect the Federation citizens. Um, and then he's thinking this is the best shot to be able to do it. It's probably not, but he's just not objective enough.
Yeah, he I think his idea is he's got to try again,
Yeah,
right? And he maybe he feels like he kind of learned his lesson the last time and he's going to do things a little differently or whatever, albeit he's not rational and he's not objective right now. He's very emotionally driven given what's happened. And you can have empathy for that. You can understand where Decker's coming from and why he would want to do that even if you know it's wrong and Spock knows he's wrong. Spock doesn't. Spock's also looking out for the betterment of the Enterprise crew. He doesn't want to put the crew in danger because of Decker's, one man, rampage to take the thing back out in the
yeah,
in the in the same fashion of a Moby Dick story, right?
yeah.
So that's also important to remember. One thing I think we should note before I forget this.
Hmm.
So there's a moment in this episode when they're trying to beam Kirk back to the Enterprise towards the end of the episode
Yeah.
and he says, "Beam me up." And you hear the transporter starting to go, and then you hear it crackle and pop and crack out, and it says, "Oh, it's shorted out again," and everything. That soundbite is part of our intro on the podcast platforms for episodes. It comes from
Ah,
this episode.
cool. Oh, that is
So
cool.
the Doomsday Machine has some sound bites that are part of our intro on the audio side of our podcast directly from this episode.
Doomsday
So
Machine is in all of our episodes then.
it is
Yeah.
in all of, well, it's not in all of them because it hasn't always been there. But when I made
Oh,
the,
right,
in,
right.
the new intro, this is a while ago now, but it's been in many of our episodes now. But on the audio side, if you go check that out, if you're watching on YouTube, check out, even if you just want to listen to the intro, you'll hear a sound bite from this exact episode with the transporter malfunction that comes directly from it. So
Hmm.
kind of a nice little Easter egg there for you guys.
That's cool. That is really cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because okay, so Commodore Decker takes over, and there's a huge power struggle here on the bridge. You can tell. I mean, you can just tell Spock's reaction is as emotional as he can possibly get without being emotional in this. I mean, you can read, he's got the resting, pardon my language, but some people, you hear some people say they're like the resting bitch face.
Hmm.
He's got this resting face on him right now when Commodore Decker's done this, and he knows McCoy's like, well, you just gonna stand there and let him take control? And he's like, well, Doctor, he's following the regulations, and whatever the exchange with McCoy and Spock is. It's kind of funny actually from McCoy's side of things. But you can see Spock's face when they do the back and forth with him and Decker. You could just tell Spock just wants to like Vulcan nerve pinch him and get him off the bridge because he knows in his heart of hearts that Decker is making the absolutely wrong decision.
Yeah, yeah, he does. He knows that. Yeah, he totally knows that Decker is not mentally there, and then he actually suggests that, right, that comment of a medical evaluation comes up between Spock and McCoy and Decker,
Yeah.
and yeah, Spock says, yeah, the doctor can relieve him if he's not medically
Yeah.
fit.
And then McCoy's like, "Yep,
Yep.
I do it. Whatever." He's like, "Yep, I'll sign off on that right now." And Spock's like, "Well, you know, you actually have to produce the medical records that you've done that." And he's like, "Well, I haven't done that yet, Mr. Spock," or something like that. And then that's when Decker's like, "Yeah, exactly. You can't do anything about it right now."
Yeah.
So that exchange I thought was both funny and appropriate in that moment.
Yeah, it was clever.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm thinking about this too, like how it all like plays out. Like because Captain Kirk, they've established ship to ship communications, right? So like Captain Kirk is right there, and um, Captain Kirk is talking to Decker, and Captain Kirk's like, "Give me Spock. I want to talk to Spock." And Decker's like, "No, everything you got to talk to me now because I'm in command." And Spock's he's kind of standing by, kind of seeing how this is all gonna like play out because which was actually kind of a wise thing to do, right? So it keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and Captain Kirk is like, "Hey Decker, you're jeopardizing the Enterprise. You're gonna get everyone killed. Um, you know, you need to not be in command." And Decker's like really resisting it, um, and then over the intercom, Kirk is like, Spock, I need you to like arrest him or put him under like security. And Spock can't really do it yet until Kirk says something like, I'm using my personal authority. He had this phrase. See if you can
Uh,
remember it. I'm exercising my personal
my,
authority for you to,
yeah, personal or individual authority as captain of the Enterprise
yeah,
to order you to relieve him or something like that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And kind of like, Spock was kind of wise in that that's how it kind of played out so that Spock could just be there. And it was escalating over the intercom. So it wasn't
Right.
escalating like in person on the bridge. There was a whole lot of tension on the bridge, but there wasn't like fist fights on the bridge.
Right.
The fist
Yeah.
fights came later. So
Yeah. I wonder though, Chris, if Kirk had been there in person, if they would have gotten into a fist fight or if they would have been some kind of scuffle, even though it's his commanding officer or superior officer, if that would have happened or Kirk would have done something to kick him off the bridge physically. Um, yeah, I also had a hard time pushing the I believe button on this because Kirk is communicating to the ship over his hand communicator. There's no way that handheld communicator communicates that far of a distance.
oh, that's true.
I just unless the I believe button is he tied his communicator into the ship and then did it that way, but it doesn't
Hmm.
appear like it's that way. So I have a hard time believing his personal communicator that he brought with him on the away mission is what he's communicating with to the other ship, which I would think would be too far of a distance. But maybe not because when they originally beam over, I think he's using it. So maybe not. Maybe it's believable.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Anyways, yeah. So there is a huge power struggle here on the Enterprise, on the bridge between Decker and Spock, and then Kirk on the communicator. Obviously, we know that Decker gives in, and he is relieved by Spock, but not before they have already gone and attacked the Doomsday Machine with no success at all, right?
Yeah.
No success at all. In fact, Decker asserts his rank by quoting General Order 104, Section B, Paragraph 1 Alpha, which unfortunately, that's something that kind of sort of goes against Spock's logic. Like Spock has logic, but that trumps the logic apparently, because that is an actual general order. It's regulations. It's things that Spock can't refute.
Yeah.
It's not logical. It's not logical or illogical. It is the regulations to which Spock is very very familiar with, and also adamantly follows those.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the exchange of glances and views that the bridge crew exudes like all through this. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I could I visibly noticed on Sulu's face like more and more sweat accumulate like on his face throughout the episode,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yep.
was like, whoa, he is sweating the most out of like everybody. And he's the one, and he's the one he keeps getting in between them, right? Because
Right.
Deckard is like, all right, Mr. Sulu, like do 180-degree turn and let's go back. And Spock is like, we're gonna leave. Deckard's like, no, we're going back. And so that guy is sweating hard.
Well, I mean, you think about it, right? He's either has to defy the orders of a Commodore or defy the orders of Spock, and he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Hmm.
And that's not, I would not want to have been in Sulu's position at that time. That would have been a really difficult position to be in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, but like to the bridge crew's credit, and I think to the red shirt security guard's credit, like as soon as it is like determined like where Captain Kirk is authorizing and asserting his personal authority as captain of the Enterprise, then it kind of goes, okay, then Spock relieves him, and then he asks the security guards do as they're told. Um, and that kind of it's peaceful as it can be, right?
Until
At
they
the
get, until Decker and the security guard get off
Yeah.
the turbo lift. Turbo lift. That's
Yeah.
not the right answer. They yeah, they get out of, yeah, they get out of there and they go to new deck, and yeah,
Yep.
it ends. It doesn't end well for the red shirt. Even though we know he doesn't die, he doesn't. He's not
Gonna
killed,
die.
but yeah, and this is all after Decker has ordered the ship to go back and fight, right? And they're
Mhm.
firing phasers and firing phasers and firing more phasers and doing all sorts of stuff, and it's having no effect. I mean, it's just not doing anything. There's some element that makes up the outer hull of the ship that Spock quotes that's just sounds like it's pretty much indestructible,
Yeah.
right?
Impenetrable. Yeah,
Impenetrable,
exactly.
yeah. So, that's kind of an important thing to note there. But yeah, I mean, and because of that, the Enterprise does take on damage. It is affected, not to the level the Constellation was, but it is damaged. And I find it interesting that when Kirk asks the status of things once Spock, or right before Spock takes back command, he asks the status of the ship, and Spock says it's going to take a solar day.
Yeah.
A solar, which I don't remember that ever being used as a frame of reference for time ever again in Star Trek. Maybe it is. I just can't remember. I didn't remember it was in this episode. But interesting that he mentions a solar day versus just saying 1 day, because 1 day compared to what? Um, that it's going to take like a solar day to repair the deflectors and the deflector screens as they call them, and then I think the one other element of the ship
Yeah.
that's going to take a whole day
Warp
to
drive? I
fix. But
think that they've got to fix the warp drive as well.
I mean, it might be that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just that was very interesting the way that was put together. But
And they didn't specifically said like which solar day, because if you're going to be specific, it could be an Earth solar day, it could be a Mars solar day,
yeah,
which there's a time difference there.
yeah, that's true. So we then get this period of time where you see Spock. and Kirk working together to stop the Doomsday Machine from happening. However, Commodore Decker also steals a shuttlecraft,
Yeah.
and they're not able to stop him from, you know, taking his own life and flying into the Doomsday Machine. And what Kirk initially thinks is a senseless death, right? It was no point to his death. It didn't do anything. Once Spock discovers the sensor information, they realize, oh wait, Decker actually showed us possibly a way to eliminate the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah. And yeah, that was a good that's the most probably the most memorable scene for me of this entire episode is
Hmm.
Decker stealing the shuttlecraft and then taking it down into the Doomsday Machine. Just the expression on Decker's face, like as he gets closer and closer, and the horror like that is on the face on his face was incredible.
Yes, I read it as horror. To me, there was also somewhat of an element of maybe a little bit of like, "Hey, I'm getting my revenge," and a little bit of sense of a relief that he's gonna meet the same demise the rest of his crew did. But I think the majority of it, yes, is that element of horror.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think from the very first time I ever saw this episode, I always remember that the scene of the Commodore taking the shuttlecraft in, and he's a broken man and he's kind of on the edge and he's taking it in and this is his end.
Yeah. 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 So, okay. We look at it, we look at the fact that Kirk and Spock work together and with Scotty's help, obviously, because Scotty and him are the only ones left in the ship, and then Scotty leaves, and then it's just Kirk, and then they're able to beam him out in time, but they thrust basically the Constellation into the Doomsday Machine. They overload the impulse engines. It blows up in kind of like an old H-bomb type of way and destroys the Doomsday Machine from the inside out. It's one thing that Decker, I think, didn't realize is that the machine could be destroyed, but it had to be destroyed from the inside, not the outside,
Yeah.
which was with a little bit of a downfall there. Um, what do you, okay, so let's look at Commodore Decker as a whole here, right? Because at the end of the episode, there is comments made about um, Decker's feelings for the responsibility of his crew and uh, you know the I guess the weight that Decker maybe had on him because of what happens, even though they tell him, hey, this isn't like you said earlier, this isn't your fault. Like it's not like you chose to do this. No, you didn't choose your crew to die, right? Uh, but I want to discuss Decker for a moment here as we wind this episode, our first episode of our new Spotlight series
Mhm.
down, because that's part of the Spotlight series is focusing on these individual characters in the umbrella of the episode or episodes that they're in. So as a whole, how do you look at Decker from this episode based on his judgment, his decision making, his leadership, and so forth? Because I definitely have some negatives, but also some positives too.
Yeah, he is a tragic figure for sure.
Yeah,
So I
almost Shakespearean, don't you think?
yeah,
Like almost like a Shakespearean type figure.
yeah, that's how I judge him is like he is a figure um of tragedy and he's subject to tragic circumstances. I think his judgment was all sound, like going into investigating what this phenomenon was, why the planet was breaking up, and then not knowing anything else, realizing, hey, there's this terrible device out there, then trying to protect his crew, beaming his crew to some safe where he thought was a safe haven, and then going to try and destroy the device, the Doomsday Machine himself. I think all of that was sound, and um, and then and then he got broken, and then what he couldn't do like after that was become objective. Like he should have never asserted. authority over the Enterprise. He should have just let that like play out, be be an advisor. I I I can kind of understand from his perspective though, like why he didn't just want to retreat, because this was a circumstance of like they couldn't penetrate the communications barrier of the subspace interference. So they couldn't communicate to the outside. So how were they going to warn Starfleet like in the first place?
Yeah.
So I understand that, but he had already gone through the motions of like, hey, we're not powerful enough to even make a difference on this thing anyways. Like we can't destroy it conventionally. So so he should have hung back, done as much analysis as they could, because what they eventually discovered was, hey, there was a way to destroy it, but they needed some investigation in order
Yeah.
to do that. And that's where he wasn't objective enough to kind of go back and go, hey, how do we investigate this even more to kind of come up with an effective strategy to destroy it. That's where he couldn't separate himself enough to come up with a strategy. So I think that was a big downfall. And then like through that, then he was putting a lot of people in danger. So that's really hard to do, like is to become objective like after he went through that terrible experience. Like how would you be able to do that? That's is I'm sure very, very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, he was a captain of a ship and he beamed 400 people down off his ship and they all perished in the destruction of that third planet in the system when the Doomsday Machine destroyed it. That's not an insignificant amount of people. 400 people, that's a lot of people, right? I mean, not to downplay, anybody of a captain's crew being lost, but if you're a captain and you're the only one left and all 400 of your crew perish, I mean, yeah, don't you think that kind of make you go a little crazy? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're right on that, Chris.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, you bring up a great point too. Let me say this before I forget it. There's when he steals the shuttlecraft, and then Kirk is talking to him and saying, "Hey, Decker, like, what are you doing? Don't be stupid. You're gonna get yourself killed. You're a commodity." He says something like, "You're a commodity. You're valuable to
Yeah,
Starfleet,
yeah.
right?" Um, Decker actually he says this phrase where he goes, I was all ready to die when my crew perished. I was all ready to die. It was something, a phrase like that, right? So he had actually, when I think about it, he had already decided that.
Hmm.
Um, um, he was just looking for the method.
Yeah,
So, um, whether it was taking the entirety of the Enterprise with him or taking a shuttlecraft, like the death of his 400 crewmates broke him to the point where he was just looking for, he was going to die. He had
yeah.
decided that, and he was just looking for the method now.
The misstep there is he was willing to, because he wasn't in his right frame of mind in certain respects, he was willing to sacrifice the entire crew of the Enterprise to make that happen as well. He
Yeah,
was okay
yes,
with taking down the Enterprise crew along with him because he would be
yes.
dying too, right? So, from that perspective, that's a blemish for sure
Yeah,
on his
absolutely.
mark. Huge
Yeah.
blemish, right? Now, once he finally relinquishes the command of the Enterprise and goes off and steals a shuttle, he's on his Ahab trip, right? He's on the Moby Dick quest to bring down the white whale, in this case the Doomsday Machine. And so he decides to do it on his own. I think if the episode had been different where he just takes a shuttle and goes and does it himself and doesn't attempt to put the Enterprise crew in jeopardy, then I think that my overall view of Commodore Decker would be different. But I do think so. There's a really harsh side of it of him as far as the decision making because of the mental state he's in, and there's also a plus side on it too, where he feels like he had to. um, stop this thing because he was doing it to save lives. Like his intentions were good. They really were, right? You think his intentions of destroying the ship, the Doomsday Machine, were good because he knew he couldn't let this thing get away because it would save lives by destroying it. And if they let it continue on its course, it was going to destroy countless other worlds and lives. So I
Hmm.
think the reasoning behind what he was trying to do was good. His intentions were good. His method, on the other hand, was not.
Yeah.
At least initially, doing it himself in the shuttlecraft, I feel like was a little bit more. But that was like you said, that was that. I think that was just more of he was ready to die.
Yeah.
I don't think he thought that he was going to destroy the Doomsday Machine by flying the shuttle into it. I think he was on a mission. He just was going to die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So his methods were not good, but I do think his intentions were.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Great point.
Um, if you think about the different commodores and admirals and captains that we're going to discuss over the course of this spotlight series, Chris, uh, and you think about Commodore Decker being the first one we're discussing, what kind of roadmap does that set for us as we can as we go through the rest of these? You know, we put this let me start over again. We put the spotlight series with a question mark after Starfleet's finest as a little
Starfleet's
bit of
fine.
a joke, right? But do you consider? I mean, would you consider Commodore Decker as a good Commodore, or are there too many blemishes to overlook?
Yeah. I mean, this doesn't give like a great outlook for the admirals or the commodores of Starfleet, right?
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
it really doesn't.
You know, so they at the at the end of this episode, like it's they kind of between Kirk and Spock, they're kind of contemplating what to think about the Commodore, right?
Yeah,
They themselves are kind of thinking about it, right? So uh, Kirk's like, yeah, I gotta, talk about the Commodore in my log, and Spock says something like, "Are you gonna say like like he died in the line of duty?" Right? And so like Kirk's like, yeah, he died in the line of duty, something like that. So they're kind of they go themselves are like contemplating like how to frame him
yeah.
like as a man.
And I think that that's good they did that
Yeah.
because they could have written it up that he tried to take command of the Enterprise and endanger the lives. They could have, in theory, they could have just stated pure facts with no emotion attached to it. Just
Yeah.
stated pure fact. This is what happened. And then Starfleet would have had to have been the judge of the Commodore's actions and how he was remembered and so forth. I like that they did it this way because even Kirk says that he felt, he passed his condolences to Kirk when Decker died because he knew Decker was a friend. Like he felt bad for the friend. Well, he didn't feel, but you know what I mean. I don't know the exact wording, but he had condolences for Kirk losing a friend, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think that that's an important thing to note in this whole process. That being said, they could have done things much differently. And so really, I think it's a good segue to say for you watching or listening, we want to know what you think. After each of these episodes, we want to know what you think about the specific character that's focused on the episode we're discussing, or the episode we're using as the catalyst to discuss the character. So in this case, with the Doomsday Machine and Commodore Decker, who only gets this one episode, at least of TOS, not counting the animated series, we want to know what you think, Commodore Decker. Did you think he was good, bad? Did he have too many blemishes to overcome? What are your thoughts on the character and how do you remember the Commodore? Do you remember the Commodore as someone who tried to stop a terrible device from killing millions and millions and millions and more people? Or did you look at him as somebody who was hell bent on revenge, getting back for the death of his crew? I think that'll be fascinating to hear what our audience has to say about this.
Absolutely, it will. It also gave me more like there's a different context now. Like if I go back, and I knew this before, but if I go back now and watch Star Trek the Motion Picture,
Mm,
right? And then the because this was intentional, like Will Decker's character in Star Trek the Motion Picture was always the son of Matt Decker. So
mhm.
that was in there. Um, but there's so much like there now, this undertone, right? So of Will Decker, he's this he's a young captain. He's got the Enterprise, and then Admiral Kirk comes, and Admiral Kirk is like the last person to like talk to his father,
Yeah.
literally. And
Yeah.
so there's just this huge kind of like undertone there
Yeah.
that that is great. That's great drama.
Yeah. So the question becomes, does Commodore Decker leave behind a good legacy or a bad legacy? Obviously, Kirk and him were friends, so there must have been a level of mutual respect and admiration for each other, which tells me that Commodore Decker was a good man. He just happened to experience extreme trauma and extreme loss with his crew that changed him in a bad way, and he acted and did things that he may not have ordinarily have done given the circumstances.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that's kind of how I look at the character, but we have to go off of what we see on screen, and that's all we know because we don't know how he was before then.
Hmm.
So
That's right.
yeah. So, okay, well, this is our pilot episode of the new Spotlight series, our kickoff episode of the new Spotlight series, entitled "Starfleet's Finest?" Question mark. We hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have in discussing the Doomsday Machine. I'm glad we got to discuss this episode, Chris, because, like I said, I know this has been an episode you've mentioned many times, so I'm glad we were able to get to this and have it actually be the kind of the intro to our new Spotlight series.
Yeah, this was a super great episode to do it with. And I know, I hope people go back and watch the Doomsday Machine. I think it's a great episode of TOS and that people will really enjoy it.
Yeah, and there's a lot that can be discussed. There's a lot to be debated about Commodore Decker and his decisions and what he did, and did he do it for the right reasons? Was he justified in what he did by taking control of the Enterprise and trying to stop the Doomsday Machine? Um, you know, did he put the Enterprise crew in harm's way? Like, was he willing to sacrifice the Enterprise crew in order to accomplish his goal or his mission of destroying the Doomsday Machine? All these types of things are things that could be debated, and we want to hear from you. So if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, shoot us a message or comment on one of our social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, or Threads, or YouTube if you want to go watch the video version of this episode and others. Or you can send us an email. But we want to hear from you as we go through the Spotlight series on each of these characters that we're going to look at, the captains and admirals of Starfleet, and dissect them, dissect their decision making, their leadership, and everything. And it'd be a great, fun interaction for us with the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's going to be some interesting ones that come up that are going to be fun to talk through.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've got a couple of them that are on the list that I cannot wait to discuss with you because I know there's gonna be some real shady decision making by a few of these folks, and then there's gonna be the one admiral that we all know and love, and that is Admiral Nechayev, our friend Natalia Nogalich, who we love dearly, and we cannot wait to talk about her character in depth as well. So
Yeah,
it'll be
it's going to be
great.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So again, thank you everybody as always so much for watching and listening to all of the globes in the interwebs. Again, be sure to go on our social media platforms. Check us out there, follow us there. You can go on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms and follow us, like, subscribe, all that jazz. We greatly appreciate that. And we look forward to bringing you another episode of this Spotlight series. In fact, the next episode is going to be another TOS episode entitled Court Martial, where we get to meet Commodore Stone and a couple of other Starfleet representatives and Federation representatives in a highly contested episode where Kirk gets put on trial. So that will be a lot of fun as well.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, take care, buddy. Thank you as always, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.